Now, originally I had this glass cutter, which is a sort of thing you'll find in any hardware store. I found it to be absolutely useless. And the other thing, the blades in them, they just seem to be, it's almost as if they're too sharp. They were digging into the glass too much and causing the glass to splinter. So I had a look on Amazon and I found this, which is a lovely cutter. I need to get myself a straight edge. I'm using a piece of 1/4 inch ply here, but then I want some way to prevent it from slipping all over the place. I tore apart a latex glove, which I'm going to lay underneath the straight edge. It's recommended you put a little drop of oil on your cutting blade. Offer your blade up to make sure it matches your mark. And you want to do it in one smooth sweeping motion. You don't want to be stopping and starting, because that's more likely to cause irregularities in the score and cause the glass to veer off as you try and snap it. Now you should be able to see, it's almost like a human hair laying on this glass. It's so thin you could barely feel it with your nail, but it's definitely there. That's all you want when you're cutting glass. If I take a scrap piece of glass, and I'll show you the difference between that, the cheap box store cutter that I had. You hear that it's a much more coarse sounding score there. I'm not sure if the camera can pick this up, but you can see all over the glass there's little splinters of glass where it's just far too coarse, and those little splinters will cause the glass to fracture, you see. Get an irregularity in that score, and when you try and snap it, the glass is going to want to veer off as you try and snap it, which is what was happening all the time. But since I've been using this other cutter, this one, I haven't had that problem yet. Scrap wood, I'm going to place it just under that score mark. Now I've heard, I don't know how true it is, that cleaning the glass right where you're about to score at first will ensure you get a better and neater cut. I'm not sure how true that is, but I'm going to do it anyway because I just happen to have some here. So I'm going to get a bit of white spirit or terps. I'm just going to run it along that score mark. Give it a clean first. Apply some pressure to both sides of the glass and it should, fingers crossed, end up with a lovely clean cut. Perfect. I've pretty much done it on its own. I didn't put any pressure there. It just went all by itself. And you can see just how clean of a cut that is. Now, if all you wanted to do with this glass is replace a window or a piece of glass in your greenhouse or something, then you're probably good to go. But as I'm using this as an aquarium, I don't want any sharp edges. Now, I could use a piece of sandpaper and I could knock the edges off with the sandpaper, but I find you're at risk of accidentally coming over the edge of the glass and scratching the face of it, which I really don't want being in an aquarium. So I've got this diamond pad here, which is what I use for sharpening knives and my chisels and whatnot. You could pick up a pack of these from most hardware stores for around £6, $5 again, and I find this perfect. That's perfect. That's put a lovely little bevel along there. Nobody's going to cut their fingers on it. It almost looks like a professionally finished bevel. There's a lot of aquarium glass thickness calculators online. Now, if you put in the measurements of the aquarium that you'd like to build, it will tell you the thickness of the glass you need. Now, I've tried to go for the biggest aquarium as I can with the glass that I have, which is 4mm. Now, for this size aquarium, it says I need 4.1mm thick glass, but that is based on a rimless aquarium, which doesn't have the supports inside as you see on this one. So, and that's with a safety factor of 3.8. So in theory, 4mm glass, even without these supports, most likely going to be fine. So what I've done is I've allowed about 60mm here, so the hood will rest directly on top of this, but it will leave me enough room beneath the hood for all my pipe work and my lighting. And you won't see any of these supports because there'll be an oak strip that comes down just past these supports here. Okay, well that's me 4 sides. Next thing for me to do is the base of the aquarium. As the sides of the aquarium fit in between the front and back panel, and my base for the aquarium is going to sit within the 4 walls. I know that the base of the aquarium needs to be the same width as the side panels. Lengthwise, all we've got to do is measure our widest piece of glass, so like the front or the back panel, and subtract the thickness of that glass twice. So I'm using 4mm glass, and because I have 2 ends, I need to subtract the thickness of that glass twice, which is 8mm. All 4 sides and the bottom cut. So I've got these 2 pieces of glass here. I shall use these as my supports inside the aquarium. So far we have the bottom and all 4 sides. We have the front and back Euro brace. I just want this center brace, but it wants to be the same length as the width of these end panels. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to dry fit it all. We'll work out which edge is going to be exposed, so we know which edges to knock off with our diamond pad or our sandpaper, and then we'll get onto that. Okay, so we're just about ready to glue up, but before we do, we want to make sure the glass is nice and clean, especially where the silicone is going to sit. But on any factory cut edges, there's a chance you might still have some silicone residue. So what we'll do is we'll get as much off as we can with a knife, and it will probably give all the edges a good buffing with some sandpaper, which will help form a bit of a key, but more importantly, that will get off any silicone residue that we've got left. Now to clean the glass, acetone is the preferred solution. Get some acetone and a dry cloth and give it a good polish up with that, because acetone, when it evaporates, it doesn't leave any oily residues. Okay, so I'm ready to glue up. Before we do, we should talk about the silicone. It needs to be 100% silicone, or the manufacturer needs to state that it's suitable for aquarium life. Here in the UK we use one called CT1, that's a good aquarium safe silicone, or OB1. There are many others on the market, but these ones you'll pick up pretty much from any hardware store. They're off the shelf, readily available. So we're going with OB1 today. Now you can use black or clear. I use clear on this one. I prefer the look of black, but if you're not too confident with your silicone skills, I'd go with a clear. It's a lot more forgiving. But we're going to go with black today, and I'm going to use my silicone tools to try and get a nice finish on the inside. It might not go too well because this stuff behaves a little bit different to your ordinary sanitary silicone. slightly, ever so slightly out of square. So I just need to find a way of holding it into position so it doesn't. Going to be a professional aquarium builders out there swearing at the television. Not terribly worried about the outsides because I can clean these up with a utility knife afterwards, just trim them edges off. The bottom, again, doesn't really matter too much because that's always going to be full of gravel, but I'm going to get it as neat as I can. See that clean edge I got with the silicone tool there. I mean, that's fantastic. I'm glad I've done it with the silicone tool now and not used my finger. There are some other edges, like in that corner where it's a little bit messy down the corner there. There's only silicone residue, but that's purely because I couldn't push hard enough with the tool. If I'd have pushed any harder, I'd have pulled the whole thing apart. But I'll clean it up with a blade, with a razor blade. We'll get that residue off later. But you can see the edges itself are really crisp, just that slight residue here, which I think will come off quite easy anyway. So I was going to wait until tomorrow to put the braces on, but I've decided I really want to get them on tonight, so tomorrow everything is set and it'll be rock solid. So basically the tank, other than a good clean up, will be completely finished, and then tomorrow I can get on with actually building the hood. I want my water line to be 300mm in the tank, which is around here somewhere, and then the hood will come down to meet the water line, so you shouldn't actually see the surface of the water because the hood will be just below the water line. So what I've done is I've put these blocks just in from the edge. They're both the same size. They're avoiding the silicone, basically. That's the idea. And then I have these blocks here, which will be the supports for the braces. I'll just sit the braces on top of those, and that should give me the height of my waterline. So here's something else to bear in mind. Edges, the corners of my brace are square, but of course I've just sealed the corner of this tank now, so that's not going to work. So I'm going to have to take the corners off the brace in order to get around the sealant. Right, and as you can see, I've got the braces in there now. The biggest problem I've got, I'm going to try to do as neat as I can along here, but I can't get my silicone gun underneath there. I can't get the angle, it's too long, and I don't want to make a mess because this is the viewing area, so I think I'm just going to leave that as it is. Like I say, it's going to be an oak strip that goes all the way around to cover this, that the hood sits on, so you're never going to see it anyway. But it's just a shame. I'd like to neaten it up, but it is what it is. As you can see, that is absolutely mint.